There we go. All right, we are live. I'm doing this. Usually, I have some assistance with my assistant here, and they're not here, so I have to venture doing this all by myself. Back to the old days of when I was doing this all on my own. So I'm Jason. This is Dad University Live. Just wanted to welcome you. For anyone watching the replay, you can still put your chat or questions into the chat, and I'd be happy to answer them on a future episode. If you want to support the channel as well as the show, go to daduniversity.com/support, and you can become a member. That's really helpful. Or you can also donate to the show and just be a one-time donation. And that's great too. So daduniversity.com/support. If you are coming into the chat, I know it takes some time to notify some people to let them know that we're actually here, and we're not doing it through our normal software. So it's just through YouTube right now, just because of some technical limitations. But today I wanted to talk, just because I was doing some content related to it, I wanted to just talk about some of the challenges of fatherhood. And I think that these challenges are fairly common. I guess I would call them the top challenges. At least they're what I see over and over again. And people, when they're posting and commenting and emailing me and the people that I talk to, and sort of these are these top challenges that we face as fathers. And so I wanted to have that conversation. If you have any input, I'd love to hear it. What are some of the challenges that you have as a father? And I'll give you some examples. Throw it in the chat. Let me know where you're coming from or where you're joining us here. For me, there's a couple, and they stand out quite a bit. And the first is, sort of this work-life harmony idea. Work-life balance, as a lot of people will call it. For me, being an entrepreneur and spending a ton of time working, and although this is great and fun, this is work. And so, it's time away from my family, it's producing revenue, whatever it is that you define, work. And this, as enjoyable as it can be, it obviously takes away from your family. For me, this was a lot of late night recordings, not having dinner with my family. Meanwhile, I'm talking about being a great dad, and then I'm not spending the time with my family. And so there's this huge inner push and pull about that. I'm trying to create content, trying to, build a business, and it happens to be around dads. And yet, I'm not home for dinner. So I had to be, and I'm still am, very selective about my time. And that could, that can limit on either side. I was just listening to something, and they were talking about how people who have become ultra successful in something, whether it is in work, if they become an athlete, a musician, whatever, a business person, there are sacrifices to that. You can't go or become this insane elite level of anything without some kind of sacrifice. And, that's a sacrifice that you have to decide is, what it is that you want to do. I will say, and there's this caveat of which I think about all the time, that my mother used to say, which is, nobody on their deathbed ever said they should have spent more time at the office. It's just, when people are on their deathbed and their regrets, they don't say, oh, I should have spent more time doing my work. They say should have spent more time with my family or the people that I loved or my friends or experiences. And so, that's something to keep into consideration. And as obviously I get older, that becomes stronger and stronger. And so this work-life balance, though, is a challenge. I know it is for a lot of men. If you're not the primary caregiver, or, it's a challenge for women too, women who work, or you have dual incomes, it's a challenge. But I think for many dads, this work-life balancing is very, very hard. I'm just reading chats. Sorry. So Yeah, so I think, the work-life balance, if that's something that resonates with you, send it in the chat, just say, say yes. So I know that I'm not talking just to myself. I wanna make sure that, it is something that resonates with me, that's for sure. It's something that I've struggled with. I think I have a much better harmony now, but I think at the same time, when my kids were young, they're now 14 and 12. So MM, yes. Shundale, yes. Good, good. Um, Great to see you guys. And JB, great to see you as well. Um, I think when my kids, they're now 14 and 12, and when they were little, it's when I was building a lot of my business. And it's hard. It's very, very hard to have that focus of, trying to build a business, still trying to be a good father, still trying to be a good husband. I had a parent that was ill, and being a good son. It's like we have all of these roles. It's very, very difficult to excel at all of them, and I think that is something that we struggle with. And I think everybody struggles with. I think women struggle too, but this identity that we have of being a great employee or entrepreneur or whatever it is that your career is, and then also being a great family man, and the ability to manage and have that be in harmony is something that can be a struggle for a lot of people. The guilt of not being home, and vice versa. Being home and then feeling guilty because you're not at work or you're not doing something that you were supposed to be doing. So I think that is one, definitely. What about for you guys? If you have any challenges that you have felt, in fatherhood, please write them in the chat there. I think another one is, how to parent. I mean, that's what this channel is about. I think that is a big challenge for us because we are not taught how to parent. We are, if we didn't have great role models and we're not studying how to be a parent, most of us just have a child and don't really know much about it. Maybe we've watched a couple videos, maybe we've watched or read a couple books or something, but so much of it is on instinct. And I can tell you that that's the whole purpose of why I started this business and this channel and the courses and the membership and everything else is there are ways of doing things that make life a little bit easier. They, it makes dealing with your children more effective. It makes them behave in a way that is a little bit less challenging, or establishes a better relationship with you and them. And so there's definitely techniques of what to do wrong. I think there's multiple ways of doing things that it can be successful, and you find what works for you. But getting those tools is important, and so that's what Dad University does. It's providing all of the tools certainly that I have learned over time. I've studied a ton, courses and certifications and classes and so much learning going into this, and still every day learning. As my kids get into the teen years, learning about how and how dealing with teens, it's a whole different ball game. It's a whole different thing, and so definitely of learning how to parent is a challenge, and that is a real challenge. Expecting father, current stepdad. My wife is having difficulty with pregnancy, and I'm wondering how I can help her prepare for the new baby and bond with my stepdaughter. What's a lot all at once, but I'll give you the simplest answer. How you can help her, I would ask how you can help her. Approach her in a very loving way. Many women, or a lot of women, don't want to tell you, and I'm assuming if that's the case. But also many or women are all different. And so ways you can help her is by being empathetic, putting yourself in her shoes. You can do more around the house. You can, though most importantly, is to ask her what it is that she needs. Don't necessarily use the words, how can I help? Say, what is it that you need? You say, I'd like to really make things more comfortable for you. We're in this together. I want to really feel like I'm a part of this and that I am doing my part. And so what is it that you need to feel more comfortable or such? You've asked a couple questions here. And bonding with your stepdaughter, I'm assuming it's going to be the new daughter. It's going to take some time. You probably will not. Oh, wait. Expecting father, current stepdad. Okay. Trying to get all this straight. Depending on your how old your stepdaughter is, why don't you write in there how old she is? That might help. You know what? That's probably a good episode. I'll put some notes on that. She's 7. Okay. So bonding is doing things one-on-one. That's for sure. I think it's also important to add, with the approval of her mother, is, making sure of what she's comfortable with and what she's not. But, I think it's the same. There are some different elements, obviously, with a stepchild, but when they are, they're younger, it's a little bit easier. Affection, spending time together, doing things that your stepdaughter enjoys. Those are all things that are going to help you bond with her. And, bonding takes time. I don't think you can force things. I think you need to, but doing things that the child enjoys is a really good one. If she's into something, whatever it might be, games, art, music, dance, sports, whatever, do those things with her. And that is a great way to bond with children. And then let's see what else. So some of the other challenges, I think, one of the other challenges is the relationship that you have, with your partner, spouse, wife, girlfriend, however. That becomes a little bit of a challenge because, when you have a child, the focus, time and energy goes into children. Children take a lot of time and energy. And that time and energy has to come from somewhere. And where it typically comes from is the relationship. And so there is some sacrifice that happens. Usually you get less attention. You get less attention. They're depending on your spouse and how they go through that process. So you do have to learn, what works for each of you and have very good communication, scheduling time to be together and doing that. And I think, admittedly, my wife and I in the beginning did not do that. We had sort of sacrificed our time for the children and, eventually understood that was important. But in the beginning, it's hard, and it's hard because of just the time and energy and of what it takes to take care of children. So, let's see, I'm going to read some here. Aaron, good to see you. Burgess, I would suggest talking about mental health and postpartum depression. Yeah. So another one definitely is mental health. I think, here's what happens is that it becomes a little bit overwhelming to, you're going through a lot of emotions. You are changing the dynamic of your relationship. You're changing the dynamic of the relationship of yourself, like with yourself, as far as your own time, the responsibilities, the demands, all of that. And it is difficult. And for men, especially if we are not taught to have emotion, or we're taught to do things on our own, or we're taught not to share, our feelings with somebody or get help. Those are all recipes for disaster, and a mental health disaster. And so I do think, and again, that's why this channel is here too. It's to understand all those things. That's why we have the membership. And if, for those of you who are not aware, I have a membership for Dad University, and it's pay what feels good. you go to daduniversity.com/support. And you can see there's membership, you can donate. That's how I do this. That's how I create this channel. It's how we create the videos. It's how we do all of this, is from people signing up for memberships and donating to us. We get a little bit of stuff from YouTube for ads, but it's not great. And so when you sign up as a member, you get access to all of the courses. I have 9 courses right now. There's things on discipline, your relationship, your mindset. There's all kinds of stuff, for dads. And so that answers a lot of the questions that people have. And so if you have a child 2.5, 3 years old, and you are entering that stage where you're trying to do all these things, it's perfect. If you're before that, if you're going to be a new dad, or you become a new dad, it's great too, because you get ahead of the game. The fatherhood mindset stuff is great. There's relationship stuff is great. I was ahead of the game too when I studied. I studied before my children got to that stage because I wanted to prepare. So that's something else. So let me see if I can get to some of these questions. The mental health part is very good though. Try to get to some of these. JB, how would you discipline a stepchild? Should you not do it since it's not your child? Would avoid disciplining, not because the stepchild to not respect you, since you know that you can't do anything to them. I think that's a conversation with your wife. I think that's a comfort that your wife has to determine if it's her child, and how you fit into that. If you are comfortable or you can support your spouse, in doing that. But I do think that that's an individual conversation to have. You can't be a doormat. You can't do nothing. There's going to be instances where you need to, honestly, depending on the relationship your wife has with her ex, and then the relationship you all have, if there is one, etc. I do think that parenting classes of some kind and co-parenting classes are really important, just to all be on the same page, and so that the child understands that, a line that was said, and I think this was said to my wife by her father, is said, hey, I'm not looking to replace your father, but I'd certainly love to be your dad. And that warmed her heart. She was a young kid, or not, she was a teen. And that was kind of setting the stage to allow him in, emotionally. And I do think that, it is depending on the age of the child, you're not trying to replace their father. If their father is in the picture and good, in a good situation, you respect that. You respect that they have their father. Never talk bad about father or exes or anything. And I think that you take that approach. You talk with your spouse and you find out what they're comfortable with and say, hey, listen, I really would love to learn parenting as well. Maybe we can take classes together. We can join Dad University together. You can do things and understand, watch these videos, and it can be something that you can get involved in. I don't see why you couldn't, unless your spouse is very clear that she does not want you to do that. But I'd be interested or curious to know a spouse that why they would do that. That a spouse with a child, especially a young child, wouldn't want their new husband to be involved in parenting and loving the child. And you're not just doing the good times. You're there for the bad times as well. That's part of the commitment. So, how would you stress it? So, hey, Jamil, is it a good idea to marry and have a child secretly? No. I don't know the context of that, but I don't like secrets. I'm going to guess. I don't know. I'd be curious, but maybe I shouldn't guess, but why you have to be secretive? Because maybe you have parents that don't like this idea. Let's see. First time father. My son is 6 months. For rock Yeah. So, first time father, son is 6 months. Any general advice? Yeah, it gets easier or changes. Nothing's forever. So think of things that way. The other is, understand that millions and millions of men have gone through this and have survived. I may have a little more gray hair than I had before. My beard's getting a little gray, but um, Corey, good to see you. Yes, Corey wrote, he became a member after the live session. We appreciate that. Good to have you back, Corey. Good to see you. It's great when people come back. And this is building a community, because what happens too is Corey and others will go through things and then be able to help other people as well, because they've had the experience in certain things. Where, as an example, those who have had a 6-month-old can tell you certain things that you just wouldn't know on your own. But some general advice: have empathy for both the 6-month-old and the mother of the child, if it's your spouse. And that means looking at it from the child's perspective. So this is the big. I'm going to give you, and I've said this in numerous videos. This is the biggest piece of advice out of anything that I ever teach. It's the number one thing by far. And this is to learn and understand empathy. Being empathetic means that you are looking and potentially feeling what it is like to be the other person that you are dealing with. So, give you an example. The 6-month-old. When your 6-month-old is crying, you actually feel, what would it be like to be 6 months old, be laying on my back, crying, not knowing if my parent is there, if I'm getting food, I have a wet diaper. Like, you start to understand things a little bit differently. You'd like, wow, that probably would be pretty hard, as a 6-month-old and coming into this world and not really knowing what's going on. Like, that'd probably be tough. Or you have a spouse, who is going through pregnancy. They have weight gain, they have hormones, they have cravings, they've got all kinds of things going on. Physically, it's difficult. We don't really understand that, but put yourself in their place and think of it. It's like, gosh, if I had this extra weight on my legs and in my stomach, and I was carrying another human, and I was doing, like, it's not an easy thing to do. And that has been the number one thing for me is empathy. It's a game changer. It's an absolute game changer. So learn to be empathetic, and it'll definitely impact your, and so here's an example. When your children get older, my son is 14, but I'm going to do this in real time. He is messaging me, doesn't know that I'm on a live, because normally, and there's some scheduling changes. Normally they don't, everyone knows that I'm doing a live, and so I don't get texts, but I am, and he has a question because he's leaving and he needs to know something. So I apologize. So there, handled that situation, and he will hopefully understand. But that's parenting, that is parenting at right when you are like in a live way is, you feel like you're doing something really important, and my child becomes priority. I could ignore him, but I'm not going to. What he was asking was very important. It wasn't just like, hey, do we have any bread at home? It's about his transportation and how he's going to get home, etc. So those are kinds of things, though, that give you a perfect example of, like, your priorities and things change. And that's, to the answer of the 6-month-old, you start to look at things differently. And as I get older, what is important changes, it evolves. And, and sometimes that's great, and sometimes it's not, sometimes you're like, what am I doing? And why am I in this situation? But for the most part, it is great. All right. So let me see what else people have here. Um, Burgess, you got a lot of comments here taking over. It's good though. Good advice. Let's see. Yeah. So Corey, you made a comment about empathetic to friends and colleagues, but not so with my wife. And I think that's common. I think what happens too, maybe I can identify with this. I don't know. I'll just pretend, I have this friend and, you start to play sort of this um, scoring game. I remember doing this quite a bit. Is there's like this scoring game of like, well, she's doing this or she's done that. And so I need to do this and I do that. And it's like keeping kind of this tally of what's happening. And it was doing it with my children and it was doing it with us, individually, like, well, she didn't do this, so I'm not going to do that. And then it's not until you become more empathetic that you realize um, that you just, sometimes it's your fault. Sometimes you could do better. Sometimes, you could have acted in a different way. Sometimes you could have been nicer. And recognizing that is okay. We have big egos. We have we don't want to typically admit that we are less than in any way or that we don't know what we're doing. But it all of us are in that. All of us are in that situation. And I don't think that we recognize it enough. And so, being empathetic with your spouse can just, it changes the dynamic of your relationship in a hugely positive way. Think about it even for yourself. If you're going through something and, or not even just, it could be something little, like you had a bad day at work and your spouse just says, wow, I'm so sorry that, that you went through that, or that you had a bad day. That really sucks. I'm sorry about that. They're not trying to fix it. So here's the other thing about empathy. We'll talk about empathy for a second. You don't even have to agree with it. Being empathetic, you don't have to agree. You just have to recognize it and understand it. You don't have to agree with it. And so that is a big thing to understand, because I think what happens is that, and I'll give you an example with a child. This can happen with a spouse, but this can happen with a child, where your child, loses something, or your child is frustrated with something and you don't agree with it. Like you're just like, why are you getting mad over nothing? Because you are an adult, you understand the situation. Now, you don't have to agree with it. It's not something that you wouldn't react that way. You wouldn't handle something that way. But if you put yourself in the shoes and in the space of your 5-year-old who's throwing a tantrum, you might look at it a little bit differently. It's like, you know what? If I was sitting there and I lost my, shirt or my favorite toy, I would probably be pretty pissed off too. Now, because you're imagining yourself as the 5-year-old, how would that feel inside? How does that, what is going on that, how is that person feeling that way? You don't agree with it. You don't agree with even how they're handling it or what's going on. And you don't think it's that big of a deal. It doesn't matter. And so that's something with our spouses, I think, that can happen because, men will judge. We just do. We will judge how they spend their time, what it is that they're doing, whatever it is. And as a result of it, we may not be as empathetic. Like, oh, this is a perfect one. I remember doing this. Oh, it must have been a tough day. I saw the pictures that you sent. You were at the beach and at the playground. It sounds like you had a horrible day. Meanwhile, she was crying when she came home. Like, I don't know, like in my brain, I'm thinking, how could you get upset? How could it be that difficult? You were playing all day. Not really understanding the demand that a 2 or 3-year-old, 3 and 1 at the time, has on a person. So yes, she's not sending me the picture of the child crying or the child going to the bathroom in their pants or, not being able to find a changing station or the child throwing up. She's not sending me that. She was sending me happy pictures on the beach. It's like what somebody's Instagram feed looks like and saying, hey, we're at the beach, having a great time, blah, blah, whatever. And realizing like there's a whole other aspect of that day that was so hard. And yet she was shielding that from me and she wouldn't talk about that part until it became too much. So that's a good one. Empathy is great. Just learn it, study it, feel it, understand it, and watch your life change. Corey, how often do men need a guys and solo trip? How do you have that conversation with a modern woman who works and still does many of the traditional roles and doesn't want to be a single parent? I'll start with the first one. How often do men need a guys or solo trip? I think that's an individual thing. In fact, I was just talking about this with my wife because I have never, I don't say never, but I don't have that have to do guy stuff like on a regular basis. Like I have friends that they have to hang out with their boys. Have to. It is a, mental health requirement for them that they have to go golfing a certain amount of times or, go out for a beer or what, it's just something that they feel like they have to do. I personally don't have that. I've got some great friends we communicate with, but I don't have the bro time or the requirement of that on any sort of regular basis. Now, I do at least one, if not two sort of events a year or trips a year where I'm like just with the guys. And those are great. I love it. I have a great time and I probably would benefit from having more guy time. But it's just how you choose to spend your time. And for some, for me, I go to the gym in the morning or I'm doing yoga or I'm doing some of these things which are more solo. I just choose to do that. So for others, they may need the other interaction around them. And I have never really, I'm very social, have lots of friends, but even when I was growing up, I was very involved in my school but yet I didn't have that need to be really social. I just don't. Now, how do you combat that with, if you do, how do you have the conversation with the woman? So who doesn't want to be a single parent? Agreed. Because there are responsibilities that you have at home, I think that is a conversation that you have to have. And that conversation goes something like this. It says, listen, it's really important for me to have this kind of time. And however, I understand that you don't want to be a single parent, that it's a lot of time away. And so what could I do or how could we structure it so that there are these occasions where I can do that? And she could do the same and say, I want you to do the same. Now, you might have a spouse that's like, well, I don't want to do that. I don't care. And my wife was like, my wife is more social in the sense that, going out or being with friends is probably more important for her than it is for me. And so I can understand that feeling if, the person's going out a lot or something, and then you're at home and feeling like you're always in it. But your way to combat that is not to stifle them per se. It's because here's what I said. If you stifle them, in other words, if your wife stifles you, you are going to probably have some resentment and feel very, I don't like this. I'm not feeling good about this. Burgess, I'm going to ask, I love your input. Make sure that there's allowing other people to talk. You're dominating the chat there, which I can appreciate your participation, but I think where was I got? Oh, as far as asking her, I think you have to make it so that it's really important for you, but also realize what it is that you can do, um, to help out. And maybe it is where, you're taking an extra 3 days of this, and this responsibility in exchange for, having that time away. And, for a small amount of time, especially when the child's really young, you might have to sacrifice a little bit. Maybe it's a shorter trip, it's a day trip, or it's an afternoon of golf instead of a weekend of golf. You can make some of those sacrifices too. But I think as a supportive spouse, it's important to support each other in the things that we want to do in the same way that you would want to support her and, allowing her to do it. It's not an easy conversation. But, oh, and Burgess, I didn't want to, I appreciate you participating. I love that you're here. I was just worried if other people aren't chatting, but I love having you here. So anyways, in September, I miss my 20 sometimes. Yeah, no, I get it. And that becomes hard, as you have 2 kids, it becomes even more difficult. One of the things too, because time away, this is why I go to the gym at 5 in the morning. And what I've done that is because it was the time where I could be alone and have my time. Well, it's before everybody else gets up. I think the other thing too is, as a parent, you try to find things that you enjoy and that you get that sort of thrill from or whatever, where you can actually include your kids. Give you an example. Like if you're a biker and you love to go biking, well, you can, put the kid onto a trailer on the back and bike with them. Or, you hike, you can go hike and you put a backpack with your child on it and you go. So there is some adaptabilities, although there is the enjoyment of being with your buddies and being, having that solo time. And I think that is important. But my short answer was I just had to get up early. I cut out TV, cut out, BS time, and you just got to go to sleep earlier. I got up earlier, and that was the time to do it. I'll give you even an interesting one, and then I got to go. But so here's the thing. This is what happens when you're a parent. So I go to the gym most of the time in the mornings. That's my time. And I went to the gym at 5 in the morning this morning. Now, my son, who's 14, wants to go to the gym later. And guess what? I'm going to the gym again because my son wants to go. So tonight we're going to go to the gym together. So those are the kinds of things where I'm going to be at the gym twice today, just because I didn't know if he's going to go. And so I have to make sure I get my workout in. But I'm not going to give that up. I'm not going to say, no, we're not going tonight. You make the sacrifice. Could I relax? Could I do other things? Yeah, but I'm not going to. That is something that I'm going to value and cherish. So, and as a matter of fact, I have to be a parent. That's why I came on here early too. I've got to go pick up my daughter. So I want to just say thank you to everybody. This has been a great live, even without the technical prowess of my assistant, who's awesome, but isn't here in the office this week. So just want to say thank you. Guys, if you want to support this channel, Corey, totally appreciate that you did. Become a member. Go to daduniversity.com/support. And I mean, yes, you support the channel, but you're also becoming a member and getting access to all of my videos and all of our courses. We're trying to push a discussion in there. There's some discussion I want to get going. I'd love to get, the discussion more lively, and I participate in that discussion. So if you've got questions, throw them in there. And we'll be back next Tuesday, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. Just want to say thank you to everybody. I totally appreciate it. And we'll see you next week. Take care.